The Israelis controlled the narrative in really powerful ways up until the late 1980s. Then you had this group of historians in Israel called the New Historians, who were then young at the time, and they got access to the archives. And they got access to the records on how Israel was created. And what they did is they exploded all the myths, or almost all the myths, about how Israel was created. And it really portrayed the Israelis in a negative light, okay? And that was the start of trouble. And I could tell you all sorts of stories about that, because people began to think differently about Israel than from the way we thought about when I was young. There was a book by Leon Uris. It was called Exodus, and everybody read it, and it was a movie. Paul Newman and Eva Marie Saint starred in it, and it portrayed the Israelis in a very positive light and the Arabs in a very negative light. And once the New Historians came along, all sorts of people, mainly at the elite level, began to think differently about the creation of Israel and Israel's behavior. Then what happens is you get social media and you get the internet. And Israel has huge influence in influencing what the Wall Street Journal, what the New York Times, what the Washington Post says. But TikTok is a nightmare for Israel. It's an utter nightmare. There's this famous conversation that you can get on the internet of Jonathan Greenblatt, who is the head of the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL. He's Abe Foxman's successor. He's on the phone talking to somebody, and there's a video of it, and he's talking about TikTok. And it's just a disaster for Israel. People see what's happening. And the Israelis, this is really quite remarkable. The Israelis are filming themselves doing absolutely horrible things to the Palestinians and then putting it on the internet. It's just hard to believe. And furthermore, just on the whole genocide story, if you want to make the case that Israel is guilty of genocide, you have to do two things. You have to provide evidence of intent, number one, and you have to provide evidence that Israel's actions are consistent with the intent. Now, with regard to intent, the Israeli leaders across the board, including Benjamin Netanyahu, after October 7th, said all sorts of things that, in my opinion, demonstrated genocidal intent.
This was documented in the South African case.
Yes, documented in the South African case. And by the way, there was a piece in Haaretz, which is like the New York Times of Israel.
It's a left-leaning Israeli publication?
Yeah, liberal. I'd use the word liberal.
American liberal.
Yeah, American liberal. But anyway, there was a piece in Haaretz, and the headline of the piece in Haaretz said, "The road to The Hague," this is the International Court of Justice decision on whether there's potentially genocide. The Haaretz piece said, "The road to The Hague," this is the headline, "The road to The Hague is paved with public comments by Israeli leaders," which is exactly right. You just sort of say to yourself, are they really saying these things, right? And then again, you have all these videos. And I was talking to my daughter one day who's not very political at all. She's in her 40s, and she was talking about watching what the Israelis are doing to children on TikTok. And she said, "I can't watch TikTok. I just can't watch these videos anymore. They're so horrible," right? This is a disaster for Israel. It's a public relations